Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody's fine. Sorry, I'm a few minutes behind schedule. Let's see who's on the call. Sharifat.
We have a quorum. We have you, Sharifa, Anissa, and Allison on.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. Mm. Today is the 20th. Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining today's board meeting for Hope Community Public Charter School. Today is March 20th, 2025, first day of spring. This is a public meeting for the Hope School, and we're now called to order. We will now call the roll to determine if we have quorum. Anissa Bailey.
Present.
Thank you. Sharifat Balogun.
Present.
Thank you. Allison Barr.
Present.
Thank you. I'm here. A quorum has an Eric. He's not here, but we have quorum. Quorum has been determined, and we will now proceed with the business portion of the meeting. We have an agenda to review. I would like to ask for a motion to approve today's agenda, but I just want to add two things to the agenda. Christina, I know there was an incident near the school today, so I just want to get up to date on that situation. And then before we jump into the board presentation, I want to do a debrief on the charter school board meeting we had on Monday. So those are additions to our agenda. And so with that, may I have someone approve today's agenda with those additions?
Sharifa, I move to approve the agenda for Thursday, March 20th with the two additional items described by Chairperson Smith.
All right, thank you, Sherry. May I have someone second that?
Second.
This is Anissa, second.
Thank you, Anissa. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any names or abstentions? Nope, the agenda is approved. And board members, we also have the board minutes to review for the March 5th meeting. Are there any corrections? I don't have any.
No.
No, okay, thank you.
Director
Okay.
Johnson has joined us. Just
Okay,
FYI.
hi, Eric. Oh, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 5th meeting.
Second.
Thank you. May I have someone second the motion, please?
I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? No, the minutes we approved will be online, and minutes from this meeting will be approved, and the recording should be available 24 to 48 hours on our site. These actions are based on the Open Meetings Act. So let's get started with the agenda. Eva, before I turn it over to you, Dr. Owens, there was an incident near the school today. Could you just bring us up to speed on what happened or what's going on?
Evening, Madam Chair and the board. At just around 3:30, right during dismissal timing, it was reported that was a shooting on 600 block of Edgewood Avenue Northeast, right by DC Prep. Two of these students at DC Prep alleged that the gunman had pulled a weapon on them. It was confirmed, not by the two students, but it was confirmed it was a shooting on right there by DC Prep. So we brought all the scholars in the building, shelter in place. I sent the school messenger out to the parents, alert them of the situation. And there was no after school activities outside. So everybody's brought in the building. And I encouraged the parents to come in to retrieve their children. And they were escorted out one by one by the security to make sure they were safe.
Okay, okay. And it's it probably still not at the building, but Or are things better now? Police presence gone? Or are people still around? Like, what's going on?
Haven't heard anything back from the police. They're still investigating.
Okay, okay, all right, as long as everyone's safe, right? Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, Eva?
Great, thanks, everyone. We will review, let me have this minimized. Christina, if you want to pop over to the summary page, there we go. Financials will be short. We did have a finance committee meeting last Tuesday to review financials and any financially related items in greater detail, but also follow up with me if there are questions. Key items on the financials. The first chart you see is the cash balances. Dark gray is where we are right now, and where we project to be out at the end of the year at 3.15 million, approximately 130 days cash. So that's a very strong cash position. It means the school can operate for 130 days without additional revenues flowing in, assuming expenses stay constant. Target is around 45. I am more comfortable with 60, but so in all cases, solid position. And then if we look at the annotated financials in the bottom section, as we we've done the last 3 months, chipping away at the deficit with additional grants. We secured the HIT grant, then we secured a school improvement that we're waiting to be finalized. We also have a grant application for the summer programs out. So hopefully we'll have good news for that next month, which would allow Hope to serve the summer program at no cost at all external funding. So on the forecast, which is the fourth column over, that's where we are projecting right now, still conservative, at a deficit of 358, and we'll just keep chipping away at that if we can, to get that closer to break even for the end of the year. We just evaluate every single expense every month. Is there a way that we can do that better? And that is all I have on the financials.
I just have one, so all the other funds that we used to had, ESSER funds, 1, 2, 3, whatever, those are all spent down. They're all gone now at this point, right?
Correct. ESSER was finished, was 100% expended, and ended 9/30. No additional funding after that. Title 1, 2, 3, 4 remain, as well as this year we've been able to so far secure 2 additional grants, and hopefully we'll also get the summer.
Okay, all right, thanks, Eva. Anything to add, Allison?
Nothing else for me?
Oh, okay, great, okay, all right, thanks, Eva, thank you. So Monday, we had our charter review meeting with DC Charter School Board. And I just wanted to debrief on that meeting. And who was there? Rep. Eva was there, LaDonna was there, and Amanda was there from PLA. I don't think there was anything else. And then Dr. Owens and Miss Dunstan. I'd like to get some feedback from any of the PLA attendees. What are your thoughts on that meeting?
I can definitely begin to go first. I left the meeting extremely disappointed in unfortunately what we had to discuss. I do understand that we've been here 4 years and we have to take ownership of areas that we have not done well in. And so it allowed me to do some deep reflections, and I replayed in my head several times, even questions that I may have answered, some things that I could have stated differently. I absolutely know great things are happening in that building as we speak. Today, between the Dr. Owens and the boots on the ground there are really working hard, and I don't believe that was left on display of the hard work that is truly going on in the building. So I definitely left, that would be some of my thoughts. If Eva or Amanda had any additional, because I know they were present.
Agreed. I would share the same. Just a tremendous amount of sadness on that is where the meeting was that night. I also believe there are many other pieces that certainly are not on the academic side, but ultimately support the academic side that have done really well. And ideally, having compliance and finance and clean audits and some of the pieces that have really improved out of the way so that the school team does not have to worry about those is a positive that was not necessarily reflected.
Yes, and it was definitely a challenging meeting, I would say, with some of the tone that was presented our way. But I do think that a lot of the stuff that is happening in the school, it wasn't something that was able to be expressed. I know like our scholars definitely love being at Hope Tolson and how the community of Hope Tolson staff just really wraps around. That's not something that was on display. And then I also, personally, just coming from the English learner background, I do feel like, there are some special considerations that, special considerations that weren't necessarily discussed or considered as it applies to English learners, and the interrupted schooling that they may have, and how it affects the building overall. And we are working, and we're working to improve those scenarios, but I don't know if that is I'm not sure that was understood on their end as much, as it is on my end.
Madam Chair, I'll let any PLA folks go finish if they wanted to finish.
I was finished. I thought President Kerry was talking, but it was on mute. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I saw her lips moving. I just couldn't hear her.
Chair, you want to say something?
I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was on mute. Sorry. I'm sorry. I was asking Amanda if I want to make sure I hear you correctly. You're saying that they didn't understand all that's going on with the EL population at the school?
Well, this is just me, this is my thoughts, is that, when we have level 1 English learners in the school, I felt like they kept saying things like, they were implying as if we were trying to like, perhaps like, I felt like I was being so like, as if we were putting the blame on the scholars, but our scholars have things that they are overcoming, like they don't have the literacy in their first language, some of them, and then also like other barriers. And I know that that's not necessarily a part of the current accountability as it applies in DC, and so I think that is not being considered. And that is something that is greater than the public charter school board, and that is, at a federal level and a state level. So that's all I'm saying.
I will caution you if we were ever put in that position again, what you just said isn't gonna fly with them, okay?
Mm.
They've made it quite clear that we're leaning too heavily on that excuse.
More
Right?
directly, more directly than that, Chairperson Smith. Two things I think is important to do here tonight. One is we have to be incredibly direct about what happened on Monday. I don't even like the way Monday is being described right now. Monday was the most embarrassing moment of my professional career. I've been doing this 25 years. I have never been involved in a situation like what we had to go through on Monday. So that being said, I need to also just extend, I know Director Sharifa sent an email out to you, Chair, indicating how apologetic she was that you were put in the position that you were on Monday. And I want to echo those sentiments because now I know that these meetings are incredibly public because them folks quoted me in a meeting on whatever meeting we had. So if they're listening, they listen. The second thing I want to say is the agenda we have, Madam Chair. I don't even care about it, to be honest with you. Again, we got to be direct here. I want to ask a question. I want to start with questions though, because although I think we need to be direct, we still have to be respectful. Ms. Johnson, you said something at the meeting that I want to ask you about because I'm not sure when it happened.
Okay.
You mentioned in the meeting that the board, at the request of the board and the building principal, a daily presence in DC was not requested or somehow we didn't want that. And I don't want to accuse you of anything. I just want you to explain what you meant because that didn't ring true for me. And so I need to understand what you were thinking when you said that.
Absolutely. And again, I want to speak presently, but we've had what we call other ISs and positions that were there. And it's my understanding that they did not lend to the betterment of the building, and the board may have asked that those staff members not be in the building, right? So when I did come on board, I wanted to have a regular staff member in the building. However, after speaking with Director Carey and President Carey, I'll take President Smith.
Sure.
Most appropriate, as you say, professional and appropriate.
You guys can just call me Carrie, that's fine.
Okay. And Principal Owens, it was decided, and I have to understand, probably based on past experiences, that it would be at this time a better place for me to only, essentially go through Dr. Owens as far as the PLA processes. And so that was decided, I want to say in November, December-ish, around that time is when we posted for position. But needless to say, the position was took down, and the position specifically was called a academic program manager.
So Eric, I'll answer that as well. I said no to that position because I don't think it was really needed. We've asked PLA even before you were on the board,
right?
Why don't we have a regular presence in the school? This is before Miss Johnson was here. And it felt like we were asking for God to come down from heaven and show up to get somebody in here regularly into the school. There have been other people from PLA who have been here. They have only caused chaos and uncertainty in the building. And quite frankly, I don't think it's fair that we undermine the principal and also confuse the staff of who's really in charge in the building. And that's the issues that we were having. I didn't see, first of all, it's extra money, right? But I really didn't see the need. I just felt like there were other things to get right first. And I know LaDonna shared with me that her other schools have this, and I was like, well, then be here more. If your other schools have that person, we don't have it, then just be here more. It's been a disconnect from the beginning of this relationship. And I stand by the decision that I made.
Okay, because I didn't understand that. And I was confused because I felt like we had been asking for that. And so I don't know how we got to the point we didn't want something we were asking for. But now that gives me more context.
I wanted LaDonna, I wanted more of LaDonna, right? The person in this role. That secondary person, it has not worked in any capacity we've tried before. It just made things very messy.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't want to do that kind of messy anymore. We have qualified leader in the building. Yes, he needs support, but quite frankly, he speaks for the building, and that's the message that I also want to be clear. The principal speaks for the building.
No, I agree with that. I mean, in fact, I just said that sentence to Sharifa just earlier today. So now back to, we're not going to run past what those people said to us. The DC board was disgusted at our presentation. They were so put off that so what I don't want us to do here is to act like money didn't happen. And I don't want to have some conversation about some short-term strategies. We have to have now a much more existential conversation. What are we doing? And why are we doing? I'm not particularly interested in relitigating this relationship with PLA. It is clearly dysfunctional. We see it differently than the folks at PLA do. So I don't know how to resolve that. We talk around that. We say one thing, they say a different thing, and then we never really resolve that. But at the end of the day, we have, what is it today, Dr. Owens? How many students do we have? 221, 222, 224? What's the number?
Right now, we have 214.
214. 200. My point being is we have 214 children whose lives are in the balance of decisions that we make. And I'm not going to spend the next hour and a half doing a lot of talk arounds. Like we say something, somebody else says, I'm not interested in that. What we are doing is not working. It is clear to me that the board has been asking PLA for things that PLA has not given it. I have to be honest, Ms. Johnson, when you came on board, I was a bit inspired. I felt good about the way you introduced yourself. I felt good about the way you talk about educational directives. But it has not come to fruition. And the board said things to us that I know the board has said in our private meetings. They talked about the presentation was much more tactical than strategic. They didn't hear anything strategic. I know that I have personally said that at least 5 times in our meetings. I know Director Sharifa has been talking about that since I met her. Anissa's been talking about that. So these are challenges that I don't even, when Carrie said she had no words, the problem with that is Carrie was being politically correct. That's not really what she meant. What she meant was everything I can do, everything I can say, everything I know to do, I have already done. I don't know what else to do. That's what that meant. They didn't get that. And that was to you all. That's to the PLA people. She was talking to y'all. And so now we are faced with this discussion. Y'all heard what I heard. Y'all heard everything. So I ain't making this up. Y'all heard what I heard. And those folks talked to us about revoking the charter. And they were clear with us that the strategies that we laid out were insufficient. So I don't want a conversation about enhancing strategies that have been assessed to be not useful. So our question is, and I raised it before in another meeting and people got uncomfortable, what are we going to do? How are we going to ensure that these young people are our priority? I don't want to filibuster the meeting because I have other things I want to say, but Director Chief, it's like you was going to say something. What? Please jump in.
Yeah,
'Cause I share the disgust of the DC board, and I'm not going to pretend like I don't. This is a personal failure for me, and I need to own that. I left that meeting that I told Sharifa, I left that meeting and went and meditated. I was so disturbed with myself. I start with me every time we have these conversations. And so we're going to deal with the existential issues here. This relationship is not working, and we need to figure out what that means. Director Shifa, please.
the meeting was embarrassing.
Absolutely.
It was disgusting. And it's because we have not been able to acknowledge that we have failed and we are failing. And we just keep making excuses for it. And we heard it just even now, right? So we are not able, for whatever reason, to acknowledge that it's not working. We're failing by the metrics that have been given to us, at least, because I don't doubt that there are some good things that are happening on the campus, but it's not resulting in the things that needs to be accomplished according to the metrics that's been assigned to us. And I just want to say this publicly because Eric said it correctly. We've been having a lot of side conversations on a lot of the issues that we were confronted with by the DC board. And as disheartening as it was, none of it was shocking because we've been having a lot of private conversations, and some things that some board members were feeling and wanted to say publicly, we did not share publicly because we understand it's public, and out of respect for our students, out of respect for our teachers, out of respect for the partnership, we didn't say things that we really wanted to say. We certainly asked questions and we challenged, but we wanted to give you all the benefit of the doubt. But we knew that something was wrong. And so on our part, I guess there we failed because we should have just said certain things publicly. But at this point, we're just going to put it on record. We failed. And I'm going to also put on record that, and I know I don't have to say this, and Carrie is not expecting me to say this, but I felt really bad for Carrie because I do feel like she has led this board and just the relationship with the utmost empathy, integrity. Carrie cares about their students. Carrie really wanted this relationship to work. I came when there was a different director, and I know how that relationship was. And Carrie came in and changed it around because she really believed this could work. And for her to have been put in a very uncomfortable situation on Monday, I just felt bad because it was as if none of the efforts that were being done behind the scene was being acknowledged, right? So I am going to say thank you to Carrie and to all of the people who work behind the scenes to support the children, but unfortunately, the efforts weren't yielding anything because of certain barriers and challenges. We have, in order for us to progress and move forward, we have to acknowledge that we failed and where we failed. And there was a lot of CYAing on Monday, and that was not the time to CYA. Monday was not the time. That's what made it worse. I think we would have been better positioned if we just came out and said, we see our numbers, we understand, and here's what we're going to do moving forward. But to highlight things that we're doing and then be asked, when did you start doing it? And we say Saturday, there was a lot of CYA, and the partnership that Carrie tried to respect, I don't think it was reciprocal because it felt like at any opportunity, this PLA was willing to throw the board under the bus. I did not feel like there was a partnership. I do not feel like there's an ethical, professional, respectful partnership. The data is there. We have data that shows us how well we're doing and how well and how bad we're doing. And it's our job to respond to the data. if we're messing up, let's say we're messing up so that we can come up with the solution. But what made it worse to me was, unfortunately, we came up after, a school where we saw the students talk about how successful they were because of the school that they attended. Right? Like we had college students that went to a charter school that came back to talk about how well that charter school set them up for success. Spoke about the teachers, spoke about the programming, spoke about programming that we've been talking about on board meetings. And then we came up right behind another school that was another turnaround school that was able to say, here's how we corrected our deficiencies, and here's the result of the course correction. And we had to come up after that. And we came up after that with the things that we're doing great. It was not the time for that, because clearly we're not doing things great. And to talk, and I'm gonna just end on with the English learning students. The fact that this keeps coming up as an excuse is disturbing. The DC board caught it. We talked about it. We cannot now use them as an excuse. We knew coming in, by using them as strategy for enrollment, we knew they were going to come in with challenges by virtue of the fact that they are of that demographic. Our strategy should have been, we're going to bring them in, and here's what we're going to do to mitigate the issues. But we can't bring them in and say that's the reason why our numbers are down and they have challenges that we can't address. That's unacceptable.
Particularly when I asked that question, in particular, when we were going
It's
to get
just-
those kids.
It's just unacceptable. So I'm just saying this, and I typically try not to talk this way, but at this point, this is where we are. And it's just frustration. And we can't, any board meeting that we have after this cannot be about the stuff that we've been talking about. It really has to be about the plan to get the numbers, not to meet pathway forward to get to 20%, to get our charter, but to do right by the students.
Having said that, Dr. Orange, since we had that meeting on Monday, what's the communication been like between you and Ms. Johnson?
Spoke with Ms. Johnson and our tactical on Tuesday.
Ms. Johnson, what would you add to that?
The very next day, we were in our one-on-one, and my question was, how can I lend support? What am I missing? Where can I support? We had I want to say maybe a 30-minute conversation. I go back to the notes. We ended with some personnel issues as far as strategies that he would like to see in the building. And we've since then made that happen. We also talked about, he met with the leadership team that morning to debrief with them because of the, from the board meeting. And so, we talked about the meetings, the same conversation we're having here. We had that conversation as well.
Okay.
What was said, what maybe should have been said, what was not highlighted, areas we, that we should be doing better in. So we have had conversations the very next day.
I'm just going to respond to that quickly. Prior to going into the Monday meeting, prior to going into the initial assessment, in the board meeting, we asked, given the information you have about what you're going to be asked on and what metrics you're going to be asked on, how comfortable do you feel going into the meeting? Right. And there was a general positive outlook, right? Going in, and then we got the results. Then you have the Monday meeting, and they warned us and said, you're going to get challenging questions. So again, the same way we should have been better prepared for the initial assessment, we should have been better prepared for the Monday meeting. And I'm sorry to say the response that I wish looking back and reflecting on the answers, we could have done it different. it's a consistent theme, lack of preparation, to be quite honest. And that's that's what I'm gonna say to that.
Dr. Owens, what do you think about what Ms. Johnson, from your perspective, does that reflect as accurate?
We talking about as far as our Tuesday meeting?
Just I'm trying to get at the communication since that meeting happened to now between you and Ms. Johnson, because the principal players in these decision makers are basically you two, right? So do you think that was reflected as accurate? That's all I'm at. I mean,
no, we talked about, what we talked about was with the meeting, and she asked me how she doing. I told her that I think the questions were not, I told her you should, just admit to our deficiencies as a team, and say, okay, don't be on defense, but say, okay, yes, about the ELs, yes, about this, but going forward, these are the things that we should have done. That should have been communicated, not the way that's say that this is what we're doing now. Talk about our planning and what we're going to do in the future to move our kids. And that was the gist of our conversation. Then we had some meetings, follow-up meetings that was different meetings, but like our meeting for HR, things like that she wasn't available, or I don't know, was scheduled on the meeting, but she didn't show up for the meetings after our Tuesday meeting. That was the last time we had a conversation.
Now, I want to say this to the board members, and I kind of want to get you all to respond on the record, because this is important. We know that they're listening. Like I said, they when they met with us, they quoted me.
Oh, they watch all the meetings.
Okay,
So, and that's why when we had the separate call on Friday, they were quite clear.
They're quite clear. Okay.
That the plan that they heard on the calls was not going to fly.
Okay. So here's what I'm like I said, I think we got to be direct. So I'm going to be direct. I want to say it again. I do not believe that this relationship can result in success for students. That's what I think. That's what I believe. And if that's my position, then there's only two places to go from there. And I'm talking to the board now. We either have to end this relationship with PLA, like end it. I don't believe the relation. I'm not blaming them. Listen to the actual words I'm saying. I don't believe the relationship can result in success for students. That's what I believe. And I got 4 years of history of that to base that opinion on. So we either have to end this relationship with PLA, or we have to give our scholars opportunities to go other places. But I will not be a party to a systemic process that this does long-term damage to the students at Hope Community School. My integrity won't allow me to do that. So the question for us becomes, what do we do? I know the position that PLA has. They're motivated by the contract. I'm a contract. I do that. I do similar work to them. So I get that. But this is something we have to ask ourselves as a board. And I've been asking us to confront this question now for at least 3-4 weeks. Allison, Anissa, Chair, I need to hear what y'all think about what I just said. I do not believe that our relationship can result in success. Do you all think something different?
I mean, just kind of going back, there was a question about what I think Mr. Owen said that in a debrief between him and Ms. Johnson, the question was about what can you do to better support the school? The agreement spells it.
Right.
Let's start there. The agreement between Eve/PLA and Hope at the bare minimum has that, and just that's just not being met. So even if you start there, right? But that's always been the issue, like what was promised to us by contract versus what has been delivered.
So
even if there was, this renewed motivation to support in a different way. That's your starting point.
But Sharif, answer the question. Do you believe that this relationship can result in success for students? You're on the record as your answer.
Oh, I need a minute, sorry.
Okay. Allison, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a slow processor, so I'm taking it all in.
Okay,
I think
okay.
based on, I
That's
think
fair.
you have to some extent look at the history, right? Look at the data, look at the information that we are regularly presented, and places where maybe there is growth, but is that growth big enough? Is it strong enough? Is it really doing the work that it needs to do to ultimately get us to where we need our scholars to be? And the places where we are going backwards and we're declining, why is that? What is going on? And so from a sheer data standpoint, if something is not working, it's not going to fix itself overnight, and it's not going to change in the course of a couple of months. So at the moment, no, I don't think what we have in place is the successful model for what we need for students that show up to Hope every day.
Yeah. Anissa, it's kind of important that you weigh in here.
Yeah, no worries. I think I'll stand on what I've said in private as well as I can say it here in public. I don't think this is a successful relationship, and I've always maintained that it is our responsibility to think about the students that we are serving. And I don't think that over these last 4 years we have well, I won't say that. I think the intention is to serve students and to do our best. But when we're talking about the future of students, we can't just rely on intention, right? We need real deal action. So I think at this point, this has not been a successful partnership. I don't know if things have not improved in 4 years, I don't know what another 6 months, a year, 2 years means, right? So I agree that this is not a successful relationship, and we need to discover or determine alternative options.
I appreciate that. Madam Chair, you got to go on the record too. I already know what you think, but you just got to go on the record.
I'm fine with that. I just want to say that technically speaking, we collectively, Phalen and the school and the board, should have the same data. And when they said we're in the bottom of the bottom in DC, that was a punch to my gut, like none I've ever had before. And I am still, part of me is still in shock.
Yes, yes.
I am absolutely embarrassed because this isn't acceptable for my children. Why is it acceptable for other people's kids? And that's what has been living in my head for quite some time.
And I think,
right? And I know the relationship isn't successful. I've asked predecessor, Liz Johnson's predecessor, like, how long does turnaround take? I mean, I'm not trying to be impatient, but it's been 4 years. And we are worse than we were when the contract was signed. We're just worse off. So the answer for me is no. We have had challenges with data. When we get off some of these calls, I'll be honest to all of you who are still hanging in on this call, we're like, this is BS because somebody's telling us the truth about the data. And that's something we've always had at the back of our mind, like something isn't right. It can't all be great. And some of it wasn't great, but I tell you, the sting of Monday, I should have had that grasp and understanding before Monday. Before Monday. It's the most embarrassing thing I've ever had to sit through. Ever. And the question I said to them is, and the board, we've asked for here, and the collective answer has been, we want to make sure these kids have an opportunity, a good educational opportunity, a foundation that sets them up for the future. And we're not doing that right now.
So if
I didn't even get a follow-up call after Monday or anything like that. and we're a client. I can't be that way in my world. I'm not sure why that happens. I am not in favor of continuing the relationship. And by right, I think you should excuse yourself from the relationship at this point, instead of us having to write a letter and go to the board, because it's not working. You have not produced the turnaround expertise that we were expected. And now the fire is being lit under us. It's just gonna get ugly. I don't want it to be, but the truth is, we're not going anywhere. How do you bring back a school who's the bottom of the bottom? How do you bring that back? How do you turn that around? How do we look the parents and the teachers in the face and tell them this is the best we can do? The DC Prep is a tier 1, right around the corner. Latin's new campus, tier 1 school consistently. ITDS down the hill is a tier 1 school. And this school in the same Edgewood neighborhood is at the bottom. We can't even compete with the other schools in the neighborhood. It's been a long journey. There are some things that we have gotten right over time on the finance side. So thank you, Eva, and your team and EdOps for making sure our audits are clean, because they were rough before. And financially, we're okay. We can navigate, right? But on the other stuff, I don't know. No. No. So my answer is no.
And
No,
the reason,
not working.
I mean, the stuff you mentioned, Chair, is important. Like that stuff's important. But the name of the game is educating kids.
Right.
And if that ain't happening, then we're failing. Period. I don't care what else is happening. If that's not happening, and I felt strong like this for a while, but I wanted to be fair to, I don't like, putting people in our gotcha moments, but this is too serious. And there is no way we can redo what we did on Monday. That is grueling. And I have much respect to everybody who put their faces and names to the process. We could have, people could have just not showed up to that, right? But we did, and we took our medicine, but that's it. I took the medicine. We got to get better now. And
This might be a moot point or question, just given what we talked about, but is there even a willingness or an ability from the PLA side to change? Because it does feel like there is and I don't know if cookie cutter is the right word, but there is a model and an approach that was brought to the school, and has seemed over the last 4 years an unwillingness to change a model based on the students that we have, based on, as Carrie mentioned in the meeting, the context of the community and the demographics of DC. And is there even is that even something that could be on the table to change the model and the approach that you're using? Because as we've said, it's not working. And I know that we've even had some conversations about curriculum that has been chosen that has not been OSCE approved. And you knew that going in, and yet we still stuck with a curriculum that was not approved on the approved list of what OSCE has said can be used. And we are still using that curriculum. So there are instances where it doesn't even seem like we can say all we want, changes are going to happen. And yes, we can make this small tweak and this strategy and bring in this. But as a model, I don't get the sense that that's even on the table to really make real changes that have to happen in order to address not just the kids in the school, but the OSCE, there are OSCE requirements that we are just not following because an unwillingness to change certain things about the model. And maybe the model doesn't work here in DC.
I'll jump in here. I don't know, LaDonna, if you were getting ready to, I don't want to cut you off.
No, ma'am, you
I'm
can
sure
go.
you feel like you've probably said a lot. The model that we have, and I had this conversation with LaDonna, kept asking, what is it that we're talking about with the model? We don't come in and it was news to me that we had a curriculum that was not on an approved list. When we first partnered with Hope, we shared that we use Into Reading, Into Math, and that was never raised, and I'm not talking from the board, but whoever was working in DC, that there was an approved list that wasn't on. We most definitely, Allison, change curriculum. We're in other states, we don't use into reading in some of our schools. Every state has their own approved list, and we follow that. So if we are not in compliance with an approved list, we will definitely change that. But our model isn't the curriculum. Our model is the small group instruction, the coaching support that we provide our teachers, and every bit of what your school, our school does fits into that model. Because when we have an influx of EL scholars or special education scholars, that's what we have to do, is provide that small group. I will tell you, yes, 100%, there have been mistakes in DC with this school specifically, that our model's not implemented there. And that's not to blame school leadership. That's not to blame the board. That's to say the model is not in place. So to say it doesn't work, I would disagree. It's that it's not in place, and that's why it's not working. Could we make it work? 100%. We have to have the schools buy-in to implement the small group instruction and the coaching process.
Are we doing that
To- to
already?
give-
I'm sorry.
go
I
ahead.
thought we were doing that already. And I don't understand why you're saying there's no model in
We've-
place when we've been told all along that there's a PLA model. So I'm a little confused. If you could
We-
clarify
yeah.
on that, please.
Sure. We've had multiple teams come out and visit Hope. We've actually been doing teams where they work with the coaches and the principals. We listen to PLCs virtually. I personally have joined a PLC, listened virtually, where it's not being done accurately. And that's what we're trying to get in place. I've had our programming team go out there. They've looked at what's being used, our M-Class, which is the science of reading, which is connected to the Common Core standards. And it's not being implemented well. We're not pulling groups. It's a 10-day lesson, and then we progress monitor. And that is not happening within 10 days. A lot of times those lessons are getting stretched out to 30 days, which means therefore we're not getting in progress monitoring, checking data, reassessing, moving students so it's agile to the scholar's needs. That part of it just isn't fully developed. Yes, it's there. It's just not happening the way that we want to see it.
Why are we only
So
hearing about this?
if that is the case, and if that is true, I don't know if it is or if it's not. When would that have been presented to the board as an impediment?
I would assume that when we're looking at data and we're discussing data, some of those reasons why you might not see the data gains that we want to see, we could go into other schools and we see that.
When would that have been presented to this board? Because you've been on many calls.
Mhm.
And we've asked about academic performance. What you're saying now is at the last hour. Let's say it's true. Why is it being presented to us now? So this is an example of why I don't think this is working. This relationship is not working.
Answering Allison's question, which was, is there a way that we can be agile to the needs of Hope? And I was just saying, yes, we can change the curriculum, but we have to have the oversight in the building to make sure no matter what curriculum you use, that it's implemented with fidelity. When curriculum gets implemented with fidelity, that's when you get true results.
I
And
agree
it's
with
tough
that.
when we
But
have.
but that's still an observation that could have been addressed earlier if true and possible adjustments be made. Either way, to me, this is another example of, this is
I
an example of
understand.
why I think this can't work, because I think for me, the kids, for some people, the kids were not at the top of the priority, because if the kids were at the top, we would not be here. Secondly, there's not a strong partnership. There's no trust. I'm seeing a lack of trust. When we talk about the data and some of the shock that came is because none of that data that was presented to us in the assessment and the meeting was ever presented on the board meetings. So that's a lack of transparency right? That's data that should have been presented. You should have it. We should, and if you don't, that's a problem. But it's either you don't have it, which is a problem, or you have it and you didn't share it. So that's a lack of transparency, which takes away from the trust. We cannot work together if there's no transparency because there's no trust. I also don't get the impression that there's a strong partnership between PLA and Hope, which is also being demonstrated by what you're sharing, Andrea Robinson. So for those reasons, I don't think that the relationship should continue. I don't see a turnaround. Unfortunately, it's only a year left, so I don't know if it makes a difference, but it hasn't been a successful relationship. It will not because of these existing problems that I don't think will go away.
Now, Ms. Roberts, is that Andrea? Pronounce your first name for me.
Andrea.
Andrea. How would you answer the question? Do you think the relationship between PLA and Hope has been successful?
I would say for the most part, no, there's lots of work that has to happen.
Okay, so then tell me what you think PLA could have done differently to because that's where I always start in problem solving. I start with me, and I get concerned. One of the things that Sharifa's been pointing at is that I feel like when you problem solving, you identifying solution sets, the fingers are pointed out, right? And so now I want you to tell me what you think you all could have done differently that may have gotten us, because we're here where we're at now. We can't talk our way out of this. This is where we are, Andrea. So what do you think could have been different on the PLA side?
Yeah, Eric, I agree. There's a lot we could have done different. I can go back and personally take blame for some of this. When I think about some of the initial people that PLA, Carrie was right. Some of the people we've put in place weren't the right people. And I will tell you, being in turnaround work, this is 30 years in education myself. I worked at the Department of Education and was in school improvement team. It typically takes 3 to 5 years to turn a school around. And to be in year 4 and see the data that we see, this is not a school that I'm proud of the work that we've done. What could we have done different? It's all about the people.
First, I want to say,
people you put in place.
Thank you for saying that. I just really appreciate you for saying that. Go ahead and finish, but I had not heard that from a single member of your team, what you just said. But go ahead and finish, I'm sorry.
Probably because I've been here from the beginning. I was here when we were first brought on, and so I see the long range of problems. But any time I've worked with a school and turnaround, it's the leadership. It's the leadership not only in the building, but it's the leadership that PLA brings.
Yep.
And when we put, I can think back, and I'm not going to name names, but I will say when we put our initial people in the building, one of the reasons we got rid of the instructional specialist role, we don't even have that role now at PLA, was because what we found was it became a battle between who was in charge, between the instructional specialist and the principal. So we eliminated that position, and I can look at Hope and say that took place with the 2 ISs that we had at that building. What we turned our model into then was having the oversight. So we have somebody in place at the building that's management level, which is like a LaDonna. And we put another person there in place prior to LaDonna. That was a mistake. And again, that's on me. LaDonna is not a mistake. LaDonna is one of my highest performing people on my team. She has been elevated through 5 years, 6 years. I'm not quite sure how long she's been with me, but a long time. And she's been promoted because she is, when you talk about dedicated to children, dedicated to what's happening in a building, that's LaDonna. And that's why I wanted my face on here tonight, because I'm supporting LaDonna because she works hard at everything she does. So yes, PLA, we have our fault in this, but does it work 100%? We can make this work. We have to get the right curriculum, and a curriculum is a tool. That's what I will tell you guys.
I agree with that.
And it's how it's used. So you can have 5 different curriculums, but if it's used with fidelity and it's a research-based program, you will see results, but we have to use it. And the oversight has to be there for execution. We can talk and talk about it. It has to happen in execution. So that's what I would share.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Ms. Johnson, Lucky, we're gonna say something. Did you want to? You don't have to, because this is.
It was answered. I was coming off to answer the question, but Andrea did answer the question.
Someone else had their hand raised, but it's not there anymore. I don't remember who it was.
I just want to say that, thank you, Andrea, but I also want to say I've asked LaDonna's predecessor the same thing about the turnaround. How long, and I kept being reassured it can be done. It doesn't take 2 years. So the timeline you shared is not one I've heard before. Maybe other people have, but I have not. And the instructional specialists, I probably asked for them to be gone because, like you said, there was chaos in the building and it just wasn't working, right? But what really disappoints me is that instead of having a true conversation about challenges, it's been like, I kind of feel like taken advantage of because, we're not full-time at least I'm not full-time educator. Maybe they want to understand what it is that's going on. And there hasn't been a lot of openness about this. I did want to right? And
Sorry, I muted him.
Oh,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I don't even know what else to say at this point.
That's not a lot. I mean, that's
I think at the end of the day, no matter what we come up with, it has not been a successful relationship in any capacity. This has been a struggle from day one. The advice and thing about it, you guys had to know the data was this bad. You had to. How did you not know the data was this bad?
Is that a question, Chair?
Yeah, it's a question.
Okay.
I began with "Did you?" and I ended with the voice was raised at the end. Did you not know the data was this bad?
So I received Hub access literally.
But there's a data person and a complaint. There are other people on the team, Donna, right? Aren't they pulling this stuff when you meet with your PLA people and you guys are looking at school data and progress? I'm sure there's an academic performance person that isn't someone saying this school is not improving and it's in trouble. Someone from your team, from the PLA team, should have been in one of these meetings with us and said, we gotta talk. And that ain't really happened. Let me just tell you, in my world, this kind of stuff doesn't work. And this is why we on the board, we're not all educators because we bring something different. I'm telling you, this doesn't fly up there outside of education. It just doesn't fly. It just doesn't work.
Carrie, it don't fly in education either. But you asked them a question, let them answer. I mean, what's the answer to the question? Did you know?
In February from EdOps, and during the academic committee meeting, which was the last meeting, Charlie was to come and he unfortunately was unable to. That was the meeting to discuss the report card at the academic committee meeting. And he was unable to show and unfortunately did not show on that day.
But the charter school board is looking at data for the entire 4 years of this relationship because they questioned us about this relationship, right? They're in a cleanup kind of mode right now.
Agree.
Right? So they've made it very clear they're not, and you heard, they're not afraid to close anybody down these days.
Yep.
Right? So my question is, in the 4 years of data, that never reared its ugly head? It was all good up until February?
So, and I'm sitting here looking at it right now. As I look back over the data, we had, and I'm talking about state level data, I'm not talking about benchmark interim assessment data right now. There were very, very slow gains. Typically, and this, I'm going to use my DOE hat right now, when we would see about 3% gains when I was at the Department of Ed, that was a school that typically was showing success. So if you saw 3% in ELA from the year before to the next year, that was considered not typical, but great gains. Anything over that. Anything under 3 would be considered typical gains. You start to look at things like curriculum implementation. You start to look at things like leadership. You start to look at things about staff turnover. There's a lot of variables that you can look through data. That was using the PARC assessment. So then the following year, they went to the CAPE assessment, which we didn't get those results for quite a while just because it was a new assessment, which typically happens. And that one, when we got that, we saw an increase again in reading, but not math that time. Interim assessments, yes, we've been looking at it internally. We look at our DIBELS assessments, which is when we're giving our kids our reading assessments that totally connect to the science of reading, from phonological awareness all the way up to comprehension. It did stand out. And then even this year, as I started to pull data and look at DIBELS, because I look at a program when I'm doing it as the CAO, the program implementation, is it successful? So in our network, we had in 4 months a 4% gain, which is huge. But Hope, we can compare school to school. We didn't see the gain at Hope that we saw across our network, which means the programming team then went out and looked, and it was an implementation process that was causing the dip in their scores. So yes, there were red flags. We're trying to get our programming team out. They went out, assessed the program, how it's being implemented. They do virtual observations to determine whether it's being taught correctly and get that feedback back to the teachers. So yes, there were red flags, but we did see small increases along the way in other forms of data.
So the red flags that you saw, whenever you saw them, again, who was that communicated to, and why was that not communicated to the board?
So I have PLCs with principals every other week, and all the principals in my network come to the PLCs and we go through the data. We try to treat it like a teacher level PLC. We dig through the data. So what Mr. Owens and Ms. Dunstan should be doing is taking that same conversation level, taking it back to teachers and doing that same type of PLC where they're digging into their individual classroom data to determine whether it's successful in their classroom, which students are moving. And that level of PLC is what we want to see at the building level. I'm looking at it from a bird's eye view of a school level. Where is it shared? Those are reports LaDonna will bring, and I'll let LaDonna speak to it next. But when she comes to a board meeting, she typically has a data chart that she's sharing. We even created incremental goals across the year. So if a school scored here, our goal is to get 10% gains across the year. We say we want to see 3%, 4%, 3%. Which gives us that 10% gain, which our network goal is 7. We try to go over that to ensure we get that 7. And our leaders know all along where their gains should be across the board. And that's the data LaDonna should be sharing, and she has been putting in her presentations.
Okay.
Are you looking at data across? So you look at data and then you're comparing it to your network of schools, but are you applying that to DC schools? And the charter board and OSSE and all the entities here? Are you then using the data against these systems, not your current school network, but DC schools? So if you pick maybe 5, 6 schools that you kind of use to help compare data, like
we'd have to have common data to do that with. And Carrie, quite honestly, we do that in a lot of our schools because we have authorizers that pull that data, and we look for schools that have common demographics that we look across the board, charter to charter, and compare that data. You can use things like NWEA We most definitely can do that but we can't do it with our internal assessments because they don't take those assessments, if that makes sense. We can do it with state level data because all schools in DC take the same state level data.
I want to get Dr. Owens, I want you to, I think it's important that you weigh in. What's your sense of, like, we all bear some responsibility here. There are no innocent people here. But Dr. Owens, as the principal of the school, how do you speak to, the word I'm going to use is going to bother your ears, but it's the word that's appropriate. How do you process overseeing what we are now calling a failure? What do you think contributed to that? And what do you think you could have done better as it relates to this?
Well, one of the things is what Ms. Robinson was saying when I first came aboard, there were some people in place that should have been in place. I'm not calling names, there's instructional specialists, the regional director, and I know that it was communicated to her that I wasn't listening or cooperative, but you can ask Ms. Johnson, I was. But a lot of things that was in place, I wasn't in agreement with because it was when I came aboard, it was like chaos. And we had someone else that was undermining me to would be a principal, and then the VP as well. So it was, and then there was a lot of folks that were in the building that had been there for years that were refusing to implement small group instruction. I'm not going to say that we haven't done it. It hasn't been done in 30 days. I'm going to disagree with that. There was some folks that weren't doing it, and I did report it out, and some of them are no longer with us. Some of them are still with us. We probably won't be back with us next year. So, I mean, I think we, and I'm gonna be the person. I'm the principal, so I have to own our data.
Yes.
I'm gonna own it.
Yes.
So the thing is that I'm not gonna make excuses for it either. The bottom line is that we don't have the highly qualified people that we need in the building. I think we have 5 people that's certified, but I'm not gonna use that as an excuse either. The problem is, and I have said for quite some time, and I even have had to think about myself, because it's for me, I kept saying, maybe I need to step down. The bottom line, because how can you make adults as adults, do what they need to do in the building? It's been written up, there's been documentation, but it wasn't getting done. And as a turnaround, I made that statement. I'm not worried about getting deemed on 95% or 9% retention, because return is like it's a poker game. The cards you dealt with, if it's not working, you throw your hand and throw the cards in, and that's the analogy that I'm using right now.
Ms. Dunstan, would you send your child to Hope?
With the systems that are in place when I got there, I would not. But the future of what's happening since Monday and the charter board being transparent with us and us taking that information back to our team, and as well as our new hires that we recently gained, I would, because our team members are now clear about the disconnects that are happening. And now that it's been presented by the charter school board, we're actually motivated and inspired to do what we have to do to make sure that our children are able to be successful. So I believe in faith, and I believe in hope, and I believe in keeping hope alive. We appreciate this conversation that's happening tonight, because when I first got there was a lack of transparency. And when issues were raised to the table, it was a lot of pushback, and we were afraid that we might be retaliated against in our positions, because a lot of us who got there came from successful schools. It was new for us to work with a management company and in alignment with what we're used to in DC as far as OSCE and curriculums and things of that nature. So when those issues were raised to Dr. Owens, he had to bring it back accordingly. And a lot of times he will bring it back to us is that his hands are tied and he can't make the moves that he has to make because his hands are tied. So that was discouraging for the qualified educators that we do have in the building. And for those that are just insubordinate across the board, changes are being made. Up until today, with a couple of educators who refuse to follow the guidelines that have been put in place as far as small group instruction and curriculum, those people are in process of being replaced. And it reflects in the data as well. I just want the board and PLA to walk away knowing that us, boots on the ground at Hope, we are inspired. We took the information back from Monday. On Tuesday, we did a deep data dive on the feedback from the observation walks that the board had last year. We went through that data component by component. If PLA were to go into M-Class today, they will see that the progress monitoring is happening to fidelity. Changes are being made on our end in the building every single day. And we are inspired at Hope. We are glad that we was given grace to have 2 years to make a change. We're glad that the questions are being raised this evening on, is it possible to get more things in alignment with DC? That's the thing. We're operating in an entity with 3 different stakeholders. We are the primary stakeholder because we're boots on the ground, but we have the voice as a secondary stakeholder because we have a managing company as well as the DC Charter School Board. So when we take that perspective of how we're in the chain of command as far as stakeholders, it's like, what do we do? The people with the boots on the ground, what do we do when we know what it takes to do better, but we have a leader that says his hands are tied due to a specific model that has to be in place? So those are the challenges that we've come across. And I've only been there for 2 years. In the 2 years that I've been there, there's been positive changes. A lot of the changes came with personnel. We have 2 certified staff members in our building. And of those 2 certified staff members, they have the highest test scores and they're projected to be on track at the end of the year. Everyone else has high experience, but they lack what it takes to move students because they feel as though, because I don't have the certification, I don't have to take the job that serious. And that's an issue that we are coming across at Hope Tolson. Dr. Owens has been phenomenal in advocating for getting the correct personnel in the building. And that's transparent in the data that we got back from the 23-24 school board walk. The data showed that educators and the main components of delivery were below in effective questioning, engaging students, and managing classroom behavior. We were 75% below what we needed to be. That data translated directly to student outcomes. So we had that conversation on Tuesday with our teachers, letting them know who's in front of the students impacts student outcomes. We were very transparent with it. We were very transparent about making sure educators were using this summer to get certified. We were very transparent that if we do not reach our goals, we were mandated by the charter school board to relinquish our charter at the end of 2028. So us having that transparent conversation, since then, there's been a fire lit under our staff members. One main concern from our staff members, it was mentioned earlier about members coming out and assessing the programming and implementation. A lot of teachers complain, not even complain, have a concern with the snapshots that are happening. What we're hearing is, if we're going to have a CMO coming into our classroom to evaluate our performance, it's possible to have them do more than a 5-minute snapshot so that they can see the totality of the teacher in their implementation. When I'm tasked to do observations, I do 1 classroom a day. I'm told I only have to be in there for 20 minutes, but that's not a fair assessment to the educator or to what the students are able to show. So the feedback from our staff has been, will members from PLA ever come when they do their snapshots, but stay in the classroom with us for an entire day so that it isn't a fair assessment. That information is taken back to our principal. I'm not sure if that information is translated to the powers that be, but these are very real conversations that external stakeholders aren't able to see. And it's just a challenge. It's just a challenge because our educators, as was mentioned earlier, they are working hard. We do have 2 educators that no matter what, 3, no matter what you tell them, no matter if it's PLA, no matter if it's you, the board yourself, they will be insubordinate. So it's not a coaching thing, it's a heart thing. So when it comes to that, we're asking Dr. Owens, what can you do to make sure we're able to get a qualified individual in this role, knowing that we have people who are insubordinate and who are comfortable? So to answer your question, the trajectory that we're taking now and the feedback from the charter school board, our staff members are inspired and our staff members have a vision on how we can turn the school around. The HMH curriculum, it was raised by Mr. Davis from the charter school board. When we do our common formative assessments, is it aligned to just a standard or is it aligned to DC CAPE? That's a big concern in our building. We have HMH, but HMH isn't aligned to what students are being tested on DC CAPE. So for ELA, that's a gap for us. I asked Dr. Owens, are we going to be able to get amplified? It was at a point where he told me that it was declined because of the price. But when we got the report back from OSSI, they told us that it wasn't approved. And then Dr. Owens said that in the background, they're working on justification for us to continue using it. So it's a lot of, I think someone mentioned it earlier, it's just a lot of a lack of transparency and accountability on what it really takes to move our students. It was refreshing to hear that part of the model can be modified to help us, but when I was hired there as an interventionist to do a model that's used across the district, repeated reading, to help close fluency gaps. The data was showing positive, but it was pushed back because it wasn't the model that was presented to Dr. Owen. So then we just transferred to the model that was presented to us. My students were still able to grow using that model, but it's baffling when we do have to go to meetings with OSSI or other representatives in the district that they always look at us as like our situation is so bizarre because we don't have the freedom to implement systems that we know work and that are proven by data. So if I was to send my kid there, I would just ask, what is the flexibility on the models that my child is under? Are you guys doing things that work? Once we see that it's not working, do we have to stick to a model, or are we able to make those changes? Frankly, at our school, we've been able to make those changes, but it only occurred once we got that NWE data back at the end of the year, and we saw that our students were nowhere on track to meet a DC CAPE. And then those changes were able to happen since Monday. Once the DC Charter School Board told our school board and Hope to take more accountability in the things that are happening in our building. So I'm hopeful about our future at Hope. If out of this conversation, we're able to make modifications that we know will be beneficial for our students.
Thanks, Ms. Dunstan. I got to say 2 things.
Thank
One,
you, Dunstan.
yeah, thanks very much. I'm haunted by the question that Madam Chair of the DC Board said. I'm haunted by that question. While Ms. Dunstan said she would, I'm haunted by the question that I would not send my kids to Hope. I would not. And I said earlier, we are not going to talk ourselves out of this. This is not a motivational issue. This is not us. I am now wondering, I think 2 things need to happen now, Matt, Carrie, and then you tell me what you think. We need to, 1, as a board, 2 or 3 of us, we need to go to the school, we need to talk with staff, And I think we need to talk with the parents. I don't want to leave that to anybody else on this call. I don't want to leave it to Dr. Owens. I don't want to leave it to PLA. The board has to talk with parents, and we have to make sure that they know what's happening. And we need to tell parents our concerns and see what they want to do. Y'all already know where I am. I think we need to contact the DC board and start thinking about a process to release kids. Not this school year. We need to finish out the school year. And we need to let staff know so they can start looking. That's what I think. But I don't think we should make that decision in a vacuum. We need to be communicating with our constituencies who are not PLA, right? Carrie, you tell me what you're thinking about, because we as a board, almost to a person, we just said we don't think this relationship can result in a successful experience for our students. If we really believe that, we are obligated to respond to that in some way, shape, or fashion that is significantly different than what we've done to this point.
I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, I was just processing everything Ms. Dunstan was sharing. But yes, I think it's important to get feedback from all the constituents involved before we make a final decision. You know, a lot of schools in DC do not have CMOs, right? So that's one thing to take into consideration. The other thing that's pretty troubling is why don't we have more teachers who are certified in the building? One of the challenges, and I check in with Dr. Owen sometimes, and we talk about recruiting. I push, and it's hard, it seems, and he's not quite satisfied with the caliber of candidates he gets, because I'm always asking, why aren't our teachers certified? Why aren't we getting student teachers to come in and work with us? I see it done in other schools, and I'm like, we just can't seem to get to that next step. So if anything is going to change, like the caliber of teachers has got to change as well. There's some schools you don't get hired as a teacher unless you're certified.
I mean, that's a challenge. I don't want to talk about the teacher. I mean,
You know,
the teacher
or
shortage is a
master's
challenge,
level or whatever. I mean, I don't know. You can't practice law without a JD. I mean, I don't, so
Get
why is it
certified.
any different?
Or
So
I mean, one of the things that under the contract, right, is teacher professional development and training. So is that not something that we can facilitate, is getting the teachers who are not certified? Like ideally, we would have certified teachers come in, but if that's a challenge, right, can we develop what we have?
I did ask that question a while. I don't remember the answer that I got, but I did put it forth, like, how can we help some of our teachers who just need a little help just to go get what they need done? And I don't quite remember what happened to that conversation, but I have asked.
But even if I want to be clear now, we are where we are. So in a year and a half, we're not going to retrain a staff. We're not going to rehire half the staff and then see results in the kids. That's my challenge. I want this conversation to be completely steeped in the actual reality that we sit in today.
I think my thoughts are that we have, I do think that speaking to other stakeholders might be beneficial and before making a decision. And
absolutely.
I recognize,
yes,
I recognize that a decision has to be made sooner rather than later, but recognizing the impact, and really, these conversations have been limited to a few number of people, and we
Right.
haven't had the advantage of speaking to other teachers and other people who are involved and other people who are invested in the children. And part of me feels like that would be helpful. And I know that doesn't help us tonight, but
No, it does. It actually does.
To that,
Go ahead, go ahead. I was gonna ask you, Carrie, so do you have time? Because I'm not traveling, you know, I travel a lot. I'm not traveling next week, Carrie. Do you have time where you could go over to the building?
Um, it will have to be Monday or I could make time, first thing in the morning.
On which day? On which day, Carrie?
Hold on.
Oh, okay. Because I
So
think we should first talk to the staff. Dr. Owens, can you have the staff get together on, we'll finish, get your
Or
availability.
I don't know if we have to decide that tonight, like the when,
we
but
can do an email.
yeah, I think we can,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Like
So then,
email
that's fair,
communication.
Sharifa. That's fair. So then what we are agreeing to do is, I think we should do two things. We should talk with the staff. We should make sure everybody knows what's going on. And then we should have an opportunity. We probably should schedule 2 meetings for parents. So if they can't make one, they can make the other. Right. Now, Carrie, if you don't have time for that, let's think about that, you know, as chair. I think you have to be present, but
I can make, I'll send around the schedule.
okay. All right.
It's just so crazy for me at work right now. And I will do my best.
Okay.
But if I can't at the last minute, it's because I can't.
I know.
Right?
I know.
Okay.
Well, and
No, I
one
get that.
question I have to that point, I mean, we're required to let families know what's happening.
Absolutely.
Right? And we
Yes.
Yes.
what is that? Do we have a plan? What is that timeline? Because I think either thinking of meeting directly with the families in line in some ways of when and how that communication is going out. And I'm sure that's going to raise a lot of questions for them too of, okay, what does this mean for my kids? What does this mean for me? What do I need to process and think about? And so how are we actually handling the communication with families? And I don't know the timeline that we are under in terms of getting that communication out, but I think that's a really important piece that we have to make sure we are prepared and ready to answer their questions.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Allison. Absolutely.
So according to the our meeting on Monday, they're supposed to there's some template or something that they actually give us to use
I heard that.
as part of the notification process to parents. And I haven't gotten anything as yet. I'm not sure if anyone else has, but that's part of the communication process we have to share anyway, of kind of where the school is academically.
Yeah.
Dr. Rose just said early next week. So
Yeah.
that timeline would make sense. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure we kind of know or thinking through the questions that rightfully it's going to raise for them.
Yeah.
Right.
And Allison, keep talking about that. What are some questions you think a parent will want to know?
Will you be open next year?
Okay.
Right? We have
keep going.
I'm guessing part of that communication has to be if we don't meet these benchmarks, right? We basically have to relinquish our charter at the end of the school year, right? So that they're gonna want to know that. What are my options? What are you guys doing in order to, what do I need to know in terms of what my kids are going to experience?
Yeah.
They show up at the school knowing all of these things that are happening in the conversation that just happened. I am not a parent, so, those are things that would pop in my head just from my gut, but I'm sure there's a lot of others that are going to raise. And so what are we prepared and ready to say?
That's fair, Allison. One of the things we have to be clear about is we're not talking about we're going to go to the end of the school year no matter what, right?
Yeah.
We got to do that. But I do think I think we do what you just said, Allison. I think we have some talking points around those questions. But Allison, I also think we play this thing straight.
Yeah.
When we don't know something, we say we don't know.
That's fair. Yeah. And we should, right? I don't want to
just
give
play
them
it straight
sense of anything.
Yeah. And then let parents know that we have this option to continue. And we want to see success, but we are where we are. And that's, I'm not going to pretend, I'm not going to allow this conversation. I'm not playing that Pollyanna stuff where we can get better. I don't want to hear that, because if that was so true, we'd have done it in 4 years. We'd have done it. So I don't want to hear that right now. I don't want to hear the Pollyanna stuff. But I like the questions that you just posed, Allison. Let's think about those. I'll even draft something up, and I'll share it amongst the board members. I'll get that process going. So we don't need to be clear. We just have to have talking points, right? And if we have clear talking points, Carrie, then I think it's less important. Now, I think it should be there, but if you're clear about what's going to happen, you can let somebody else, you can let another board member sort of facilitate it. If you're clear about what's going to happen if you can't make it. I think you should make it if you can. But I think we talk to the staff. If as early as we can. I think we talk to the staff before we talk to parents. Go tell about people's jobs.
Yeah.
And we need to be fair. We need to be fair to folks, right? We talk to staff, and then we talk to parents, so that when we talk to parents, because Allison, the first place they're going to go for their question is to the teachers. That's who they know. They don't know us, right? They're going to go to the teachers. So we need to talk with the teachers first to make sure they understand what's happening, the complexities, and the possibilities here, right? I'm not going to push my agenda because y'all know what I want, but I'm not going to push my agenda. But I want us to engage in a process that works with integrity, that's ethical, that we consider every member of our community, right? That's what we have to do. Dr. Owens, what we're going to need from you is a way to communicate to parents about once Carrie sends out some dates that she's available, we want to create 2 days where we'll give parents an opportunity to meet with 2 days that they can choose a day to come and meet to talk about the future of hope. That's all we want that to say. The future of hope.
That's no problem. We myself and Ms. Stunson, we have talked to staff and on Tuesday in depth. So they know the situation. They know our situation. We talked about deadlines, timelines, and everything. So it'd be nice for you guys to talk to the staff, but we have talked to the staff in depth. That we did that on Tuesday.
Well, we definitely need to. They need to hear from the board. The board needs to hear from them. That has to happen. And so like I said, we'll find an opportunity to talk to the staff. Then Carrie, if you give 2 days that you're available to speak with the parents, we take it from there. And then I'll begin the process by with the board about some talking points around these questions, particularly the ones that Allison raised. Make some changes, do whatever you do, tear it up. But let's be prepared. Sharifa, what you thinking? What's your mind?
It's unfortunate. I'm just being we have to do what we have to do, but I'm also being mindful of like real people impact. And it's just really unfortunate that we're here, and just being careful of messaging and being transparent is really important, but really being mindful of messaging because there's some people who really wanted to do well here.
Oh, absolutely. And I like what you said. Well, I like where you go with that, Sharifa. You don't want to communicate that people weren't trying, that people didn't work hard, right? I get that. Carrie, what you thinking?
Anyway, hard.
You're on mute, Chair. Carrie, you on mute.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm okay with the plan of, I think, yes, we do owe the teachers a conversation. And again, for transparency purposes, it extends to the parents as well.
Absolutely.
So yes, I will find the time on my calendar.
Okay. And then you shoot that out to us on your availability, and then we'll do like a little poll, Carrie, those of us who can make it. We should try. None of us should do one. We should have no less than 2 board members at any one meeting. It should never be just one of us. We should show a united front. We should get as many of us at a meeting every time. As many of us can show up, we should try to show up. But it should never just be one of us. The parents need to see that this is the board talking, not an individual talking.
Right.
Now, having said that, Carrie, what do you want to achieve for the rest of the meeting now that that's on the table? I didn't want to do no regular agenda. I didn't want to pretend like money didn't happen. That was an incredibly embarrassing moment. It's probably like you said, Carrie, it's the most embarrassing moment of my professional career. And there's no way in hell I'm participating in the process that in any way repeats that.
Right. And for those of you who don't live in DC, it's not 6 separations of it's like one. And everybody knows everybody in DC.
That's right.
Somehow. I actually have a hard stop at 7:30 today. I
okay.
have to go pick my kids up, so,
Okay.
is
I
there
think we got a
anything
plan.
else to add? I
Yeah.
think, yes, we have a plan. Anissa, I'm not sure if you're still on, kind of quiet. Anything else to add to this conversation?
Well,
Can you hear?
it still sounds like irrespective of what was decided or what's to be decided, we still owe the school board something, right? So the academic improvement plan, short term, was that included in the board package?
Because if we have it, we should probably, Ms.
Like, we
Johnson,
don't have to talk about it
Right, we
tonight
don't.
because we're already
right.
past time, but just making sure that we could at least review and assess it offline.
We should, Ms. Johnson, you should probably establish a meeting for the curriculum committee, because they'll lean into that. The board has to weigh in. You'll give us their thoughts about what they want to do. But the academic committee can get into the details. It's hard to do a forum like that collectively. You got to just sit down and do it, right? Because there's some specific, there's some specificity to it that is hard to do in meetings like this.
Yeah,
Oh, I mean, it's part of.
correct. Okay. All right, anything else? Christine, I'm sorry, we're not gonna touch any of these things that were on the agenda. We spent halt on the new one.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think that's
Yeah,
it. We should,
that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
This has been intense.
Yes,
Thank
it
you
has.
everyone for attending today. Do I have to do public comments, Christina? Is that a must?
Yes, we should do them, yes.
Okay, so I'd like to open up the floor for any public comments and just limit it to the discussions that we had today. Floor is open. No public comments. Okay, fine. I'd like to take a motion to adjourn today's board meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, nays and abstentions, no. Today's board meeting is adjourned, and thank you very much.
Indeed.
Okay.
Have a good evening.